Welcome to episode 57 of the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Dan Strafford. Today, we're kicking off our new mini-series entitled The Skill of Financial Acumen. In this series, we're going to explore the importance of developing the key future-facing skill of financial acumen within individuals and teams. Of course, to do that, we have to talk to Dr. Andrew Tempe. Andy, good to see you. How you been?
Yeah, doing great. I'm really excited about this particular episode and this series. I grew up in the world of finance,
right.
Finance PhD from the University of Iowa. So I'm really interested in this particular topic.
Absolutely. And, just from a personal standpoint, I wish I had grown up in that world because the financial realities of owning a home, they come at you quick. But we can talk about that at a different time. Andy, before we start talking and before we dive into financial acumen, I guess this is tangential or parallel. You were talking about your work with the United Way and philanthropy. I'd love to hear more about that. And I think it connects to what we're discussing today in a lot of ways. So what exactly do you have going on here in 2022 and 2023?
Yeah, philanthropy is part of your financial plan, giving back to your community, both with your time and your dollars. It's an important part of anyone's individual financial plan or a company's financial plan. So my wife Linda and I, we are the 2022-2023 campaign co-chairs for the United Way fundraising season here in the greater La Crosse, Wisconsin area. So, this will be a video podcast. I've got my Live United shirt on today, and just a couple of seconds to a call to action for our listeners. If you haven't already done so, go to the HR department in your company and ask if they're running a campaign. And if they're running a campaign for the United Way, fill out the sheet for the automatic payroll deduction and at least give the minimum of $1 a week. Give $2 a week. By any metric, that's less than what you paid on coffee just this morning. So,
even if you had it at home at this rate, I mean, that is very true. So.
Right. And it's all about starting that muscle, getting that muscle going of giving back. And the United Way is such a great way to do it.
Also, anything that can come out of my paycheck before I see it, the better off I am. So health insurance, life insurance, anything. So I like the idea of the payroll direct rather than money in my hands. They're toys to buy, Andy. They're toys to buy. But
it's one of those deductions that helps you feel good. It's probably the only deduction. Everything else is taxes and insurance and everything else. This is like the only deduction that you go, oh yeah, cool. I helped people with that $4 this paycheck that I didn't get.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think. I've been donating in a variety of ways in my adult life. Even when I was a kid, my mom put that into us very early of giving back, even though we didn't have much, finding ways to do things or donate. So good on you, good on your wife. I think it's great to be involved. And to anyone listening, takes an email, takes a search of your intranet to see what's going on and what you can do for a charity like the United Way. Transitioning to the topic at hand, which is involved in that sort of the money, the ideas, how we understand finances and planning in that way, and future-facing skills that you've talked about in the Balancing Act. Of course, your book available across all of the different book outlets out there. You talk about 4 key future-facing skills. Can you summarize for those who are either new or for those who haven't specifically read the book, that list as you wrote in the Balancing Act?
Yeah, look, we're in the midst of a reskilling revolution, as we've had a number of episodes on that. And so there are, dozens and dozens of skills that we could potentially be talking about today. In my book, I narrow it down to a subset of 4 that are just absolutely fundamental to your future in the world of work and, frankly, your future at home. And the first is the whole portfolio of human skill. I'm kind of cheating here a little bit by taking a whole portfolio of things like empathy and its cousin compassion, its grown-up cousin compassion, and and a whole emotional intelligence toolkit, communication, vulnerability. These are all human skills that are essential in the world of work. So I lump that all together, that you need to grow your human skill set. So that's number 1. Number 2 is financial acumen. And I'm not saying you have to be a financial expert. We're saying financial acumen. Next comes business acumen, very closely related, but separate. And then finally, data or digital literacy. And again, I'm talking about literacy. I'm talking about acumen. I'm not talking about expertise necessarily. This is all in service of just having a base level understanding of what everybody around you is talking about.
The way when we discussed this episode and notes came back and forth was understanding a language, but maybe not mastering it, right? Like the idea of being able to understand some Spanish or understand some Japanese, to be able to be somewhat conversant in, not being a master at it, but building that base level to then scaffold on top of it. Why these 4 though? Like why did you narrow it down to these 4 really key future-facing skills?
Well, the language of business is finance and accounting. Your business is described by the numbers and by the ratios and how this key performance indicator interacts with another key performance indicator. And so on the financial and accounting side, you're for all intents and purposes lost in many conversations in the business world if you don't understand the basics of how your financials are put together. And probably most importantly, you can't tell the story of your business and what you're doing without speaking that language. And the same thing goes with business acumen, knowing what's going on around you and taking the blinders down. And then the data literacy side, we're going to have a whole mini series on data and digital literacy later this year that I'm really excited for. But spoiler alert, everybody should know how to code, or at least have done just a little bit of coding in their lives as you enter the workforce. Understanding how software is created is, to not do that is just giving agency to a bunch of other people that know how to do that, and you have no idea what's going on. Do you really want to give up that kind of agency for a future that is software, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, blockchain, all of that that kind of world that is here, and it's just going to compound in the future. So these are the skills for you to navigate in the world of work and, frankly, in the world of life. These are just foundational.
Makes a lot of sense to me, and it's the pieces that make it all work, right? It all comes together to be your ability to navigate your day-to-day, and both personally and in the business world. So if we dive into financial acumen, we target in on why we're here today. How would you define that for the layperson, for someone who just isn't aware quite yet, and someone who needs to build their own financial acumen?
Yeah. So financial acumen is the basic understanding of the language of business and how to interpret financial results within a particular area of expertise. It's really no more difficult than that. We're going to talk about anxiety in this show. A lot of people have a great deal of anxiety as it relates to especially the financials of what they're doing. And the other phrase that comes to mind is imposter syndrome. I'm gonna stand up in front of this group. I'm gonna make this presentation. I'm gonna talk about these numbers. But gosh, I hope nobody really asks me a serious question, because if you scratch more than a thumbnail, I have no idea what's behind these numbers.
Yep.
And so many people are so afraid, unnecessarily, because it takes work. As you mentioned before, it is a language. It's learning a different language. There is different terminology. We can't change that, right? But we can make it much less scary and much more approachable.
Well, I think that's a great transition of where does that need to start? Where does that training and the honing of, or at least the introduction to these skills need to begin for an individual?
Yeah, look, we need to do it in primary school.
Yes.
Right back to the beginning. And it starts with the language of mathematics. Mathematics is the language that underlies all of finance and accounting. So if you're scared of math, then you're going to be scared of accounting and finance. They just follow on from one another. And from an academic perspective, we've just made mathematics so unapproachable, so scary. And a lot of that, I talk about, starting in primary school. A lot of this messaging starts in the home.
Absolutely.
So Billy, Susie come home from school with mathematics homework, and instead of the parent going, "Hey, it's been a long time. Let me get back up to speed on that. Let me teach myself about third grade math, and then then I'll help you." Instead, it's, "Oh my God, they're trying to teach you math. I have no idea what's going on, and you don't need that anyway." So the kid goes back into the classroom and is turned off to the beauty of mathematics inside the home. So imagine then the hill that the teacher has to climb in that third grade classroom, trying to convince that individual, that child, about the importance of math. And then the other sin that is occurring is we're making mathematics far too academic early on in a child's life. And you'll hear, we're going to talk about experiential learning over and over again. We need to make math more approachable. We need to make math fun. Math, you're going to roll your eyes and laugh your ass off at me here. Oh, I said, is that a word that I can say on a podcast?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm getting all excited. But we can make mathematics fun and approachable. And far too many teachers make math stuffy and stodgy, and it's just a grind to get through it, when it should really be a joy to learn.
Best teachers make anything they're teaching accessible. And so
That's right.
Making math accessible, I've been lucky with my children's teachers thus far. My oldest doesn't love math, but understands the necessity for it. And the middle child loves it and makes me quiz her while I'm driving, which confuses me where I have to come up with mathematical equations while driving, but that's a different story for a different time.
Dan, a lot of people say, well, I'll never use this stuff again.
No,
and that is just a patent falsehood because yes, you're probably never going to pull out the quadratic equation in its entirety and solve a problem, right? You're probably never going to do that again after college or tech school or whatever. But the process of estimation is occurring all the time in our lives. Our brains are estimating everything, the distance between here to that thing that I'm looking at over there, and how that thing over there relates spatially to this thing over there, and how am I going to navigate from here to there? That's just a big geometry problem. And when you understand geometry, or if you're playing pool, pool is just a big geometry problem. And if you understand some basic geometry, pool is a lot more fun than it is otherwise, because you can visually see in your mind how the pool balls on the table are arrayed and how they can potentially interact with one another. So math can be fun, it can be approachable, and you're going to use it the rest of your life. You just don't, it's just not something that we pull out these equations and we use them. It is more in our navigation of the world and how we're able to see it once we are mathematically aware. And then the same thing happens with finance, but I'll shut up now.
No, it reminds me of junior year of high school. Went on a school trip. My math teacher was one of the chaperones, and we went to play miniature golf. And he probably 3 or 4 holes in a row got 2 or a hole in one. And he turned to me and goes, "Don't you wish you paid attention in geometry?" And walked away. And I was like, oh, wait, he's right. That's Don Groninger. If you're listening out there, I appreciate the lesson many, many years ago. We're going to pause to remind you how to find the great book that Andy has written. Another book is coming soon, so you'll want to stay tuned for that information as well. But I get to, after this break, find out where Andy's introduction to the world of finance came from. Be right back.
Thanks for listening to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andrew Tempe. In my book, Balancing Act, Teach, Coach, Mentor, Inspire, I explore the characteristics required of leaders who must find balance between strength and vulnerability, confidence and selflessness, passion and measure, and leadership and followership. Balancing Act is available today at Amazon.com.
All right, Andy, we're talking about primary education. We're talking about financial acumen. You talked about growing up in the world of finance. What was your introduction? What was the thing that even hooked you? What brought you into the world of finance? So when you read my book, you'll find out that my path in this life is non-traditional. I have a very interesting path. So I started college late. I started college at halfway through my 21st year on this planet, and so I was behind. And I wanted to be history. I wanted to teach history. I love history. But then I found out how much history teachers and history professors make. It was very obvious to me, being a non-traditional student, that I was going to have to make money. I was deeply in love with my future wife at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to have a family. I'm terrified. I'm not going to be able to make this work as a history teacher. So I went over to economics. Well, and I had loads of fun in economics, but then I talked to a guy named Keith Sharoni, who is one of my mentors, and Keith said, "Yeah, just like history, you want to be an economics professor, you're not going to make any money doing this either. But there is this group down the hall. It's called the finance department. Why don't go talk to them? Because if you get into the world of finance." And this is back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, the salary
differential for a professor in econ and finance was it was about a 20% differential. So I jumped ship, walked down the hall, and started taking my first finance courses. And it's almost a seamless transition between economics and finance. Economics being much more theoretical and philosophical, which is cool. We need that, and finance, which is much more applied and practical. So I thank Dr. Keith Sharoni for turning me on to the world of finance.
So you had a mentor of sorts. You had somebody that pointed you in a direction, someone to help you see what was out there in front of you. What advice would you give to the academic community, to the people who may be mentors, who may be pointing these future leaders, these future business leaders, to improve financial acumen in graduates?
Yeah. So first of all, we have to stop, just like in our homes, and belittling and begrudging and pushing back on mathematics, finance, accounting. If you are a professor in a different discipline other than finance or accounting, and you're poo-pooing the world of finance and accounting, or saying that mathematics doesn't matter and you can get by without it, please stop. Please stop doing that right now. That is just wholly unhelpful. It might feel good in the moment to help yourself feel better, but it's certainly not helping your students be successful in the world of work. So that's ask number one, is let's just change the language. Number two, and this goes to our math professors and our finance professors and our econ professors, stop putting up these artificial walls of, oh, this is super hard and super scary, and you come into my class and I'm gonna belittle you. I'm gonna make you feel bad for not wanting to follow my path and not get as smart about this as I am. There's all of this kind of mental gamesmanship that happens that just is wholly unhelpful. So message to non-finance and accounting faculty, message right back to finance, accounting, and faculty, and then to administration generally. We need to make our educational experiences generally much more experiential, hands-on. And so if you're the head of an academic institution that allows a student to go from entry to graduation without being an active member in a club or some real project that the students need to engage in, or better yet, a paid internship. If you're not getting your students out in the real world or creating those experiential learning opportunities that contain the language of business in them, then you're doing your students a disservice, and that needs to be a top priority for your academic institution.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think even in the most humanities of topics, math exists. And so finding those access points and finding the right way to interweave all of these subjects together is that great learning experience, being able to do it all. What about at work, though? We've graduated. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, before we get to work, just a quick example.
Yes,
music yes. is mathematics.
Right.
So, if you're in a music department and you're not making that connection for your students, shame on you, frankly. Get with the program, make that connection, help your music students see the beauty of mathematics and how the two, what they're doing is all interrelated.
I'm going to hold you to that. My middle child starts the trumpet today, so we're going to have to figure something out when she comes home with that one. But so we've already graduated. We're already working. We're hired as a marketing person, or we're hired as we're not a math person. We've already said I've left that in the past. How can business leaders? How can managers improve the financial acumen of their employees across the entirety of their business?
Yeah, look, it starts with leadership. The culture of any organization starts at the top, and so what I liked to do as a leader is I liked to use town halls and other major corporate communication events as experiential learning tools, and we wouldn't take the entire time as a teaching opportunity, but we'd pick a concept. So my former chief financial officer, Mike Pyre, and I, we'd pick a concept and like the net operating income of the business. Mm-hmm. And when we were talking about net operating income, we would pause for a moment and say what that number is and how it's derived and why it's important. We would talk about the why behind the numbers as much as we possibly could. And, there were small bite-sized chunks, but we always tried to be teachers when we were imparting the important information to the entire organization. So that's, first and foremost, you as a leader set the tone, set the example, and use your time, your valuable time in front of your teams as a teaching opportunity. The next thing you can do is invest in quality finance for non-financial professionals training. This should be mandatory in all organizations. So I'm giving a big boost to all the non-financial professionals trainers out there, and there are many. And now I'm pointing my finger at them and saying, make it more accessible, make it fun. If your training is drudgery, own up to that and make a change. And then finally, we can grow financial acumen within our own department by focusing on the key performance indicators that we have to follow as that are part of our goals and part of our contribution to the company, and help your entire team. If you're the leader of a small group, help your entire team understand how those key performance indicators are created. What are the numbers that go into them? What's the data that then drives those numbers? And just start small and just keep on using those examples and growing that knowledge slowly but surely. And if you make it real for people, then it'll start to stick. So
I love it.
Yeah, we've been talking for 20 minutes now or so, and you're not a financial professional. You've lived a lot of the things that I'm talking about. Yes. What did we miss today?
Well, it's fascinating. My first job was in finance. I worked for BlackRock or Merrill Lynch investment managers in operations. So I was bringing on these accounts with very large numbers of zeros at the end of them and putting them into systems. And without a real full understanding of that implication, but also how it influenced the bottom line, right? Where all this money went and how it was tracked and how it was worked with. And I sought that knowledge out because I like the question why. I'm somebody who likes asking why are we doing this? Why is this process this way? Why does this work this way? But I think you've covered off on the big thing when this topic comes up for me is schooling. And I do think there's a deficit in American schools in personal financial education.
Yep.
Balancing a checkbook, understanding your monthly bills, how is a mortgage calculated? Like the actual like compound interest stuff that you don't really need to know, right? But it just makes it easier to live in this world having that knowledge. I'd love to see more of that. And I think the big thing that comes across to me is access. And we talked about it. You discussed the CEO or the leadership team talking in town halls, but finding ways to give access to these numbers and give access to why it matters to people who otherwise may not have an everyday access to it, I just think is so important to buy in to caring about the bottom line. It's really easy as what I'll call a worker bee, someone they're at their 9 to 5. They're not looking to be a manager. They're looking to, do their job, go home, eat some steak, watch a baseball game, and then go back and do it tomorrow. It's really easy to say, I don't need to care about that. I'm doing my job, whatever. But all of it levels up. All of it levels up. And so if I'm doing my job, my manager gets to do her job, their manager, it just gets to go up the chain. So giving access. And I think something that you hit upon is use more analogies. I think it's so easy for financial people to just say, here are the numbers.
Yeah.
But a former colleague of ours, I know a good friend of yours, I admire him to the day I die, John Polstein, JP at Kaplan, was so good as a CEO because he made relatable analogies to what was happening.
Yep.
And so we were able to understand, okay, I get it. Now, he used baseball analogies, so he spoke to me very well, but it was great to have that access and to have that ability to, and he would change them. He'd make sure he was talking to different audiences and making sure to discuss. So maybe just call JP and get him to talk to your teams. But I think this is a great topic and one that I think will really hit home with those listening.
Yeah, and just before we wind up and you do our outro here, we don't talk about politics much, if at all, on this show. But this conversation of finance, accounting, and economics and the importance of it is really ringing true right now. We're in a high inflationary environment, and politicians like to blame others for whatever's going on because it garners votes. But if we were all more financially aware and had greater financial acumen, which means greater economic acumen as well as a follow-on, you would know that a politician that's saying that inflation was caused by the president, for example, you would know that is just total malarkey.
Yep, there it is.
It's just total malarkey, because you would then go, oh yeah, the pandemic, it disrupted every supply and demand curve on the planet, not just here in the United States. And a demand curve is a plot of price against quantity. And you would see P and Q directly interrelating with one another, and supply is disrupted significantly. So where's price going to go? It's depending on the elasticity, the price is likely to go up. So, and is that one person's fault or one political party's fault? Certainly there are contributing factors. Right. Government spending certainly has an impact, but it's not the sole cause. And so we would start to see pushback against these black and white, you're wrong, I'm right. And you'd see people saying, look, it's much more nuanced than this. Can we start getting more to root cause and how we can come together to solve these challenges? That's what financial acumen will do in your business. That's what it would do from a political perspective and in our homes. Improving this skill just raises us all up.
I smell a future book in your future, The Balancing Act, Fixing Politics in America. I think we got it. We can print it right now. It's just done. Yeah, I could not agree more with what you just said. All of these pieces of education and learning and self-realization is incorrect, but just being able to critically think by having an understanding of how things work is just so important in every day to day, and particularly important right now with what you're exactly right with the financial process that we're seeing play out at our grocery stores, at the gas pump. Yes, it's really easy to point a finger and say you're to blame, not you, Andy, but whoever you're pointing across the aisle at. But just having a better understanding of how things work, I think has helped me a lot. And just being able to have conversations and plan and understand my grocery bills going up and why it's going up and how to try to be more mindful of that. But a conversation to continue. These podcasts are obviously available across your favorite podcasting app. If for whatever reason you have an app that you're not seeing it on, please message Andy on LinkedIn, reach out, let us know. We'll be sure to add it. You can find, of course, all of this great content, the Saturday Morning News, links on LinkedIn, and of course, that book, The Balancing Act, is available across Amazon, all your different book outlets. Like, subscribe, share, tag Andy on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well. Feel free to tag and ask questions. We can, of course, cover topics like that in the future. Until next time, you've been listening to The Balancing Act.